Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie and today we're actually going to talk about the Get a Clue Readathon. For those of you that don't know, I am actually co-hosting the Get a Clue Readathon and I am representing Team Scarlet. Team Scarlet is my favorite. Scarlet, the character, is always my favorite to play in the board game. I don't even want to play if I don't get her. I know that's very weird, but I'm a highly competitive, routine kind of person. If I can't be Team Scarlet, what is the point? Not to say that you shouldn't join other teams. I'm just saying that's how I feel about Team Scarlet. That is why I decided to be one of the co-hosts for Team Scarlet. I'm very passionate about it. Anyways, I am co-hosting Team Scarlet with Brittany Loves Reading, and we have some bonus prompts that you can use to get points throughout the readathon, and the readathon will last the whole month of November. If you want more details specific, not just to Team Scarlet, but just of the overall readathon, I'm going to have the announcement video down below. It is created by Rainy Blue Reads. Please check it out. She's worked so hard on putting this together. It is definitely worth your time. One of the bonus prompts, though, for Team Scarlet is to read books with a red cover. I'm gonna warn you guys now, because I'm going to go through 3 different prompts for books. I am going to not be giving descriptions about what the book is. I'm probably just gonna tell you the genre, and that way we can keep things fast. The first book I chose for a book with a red cover is Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. Nobody's surprised by this choice from me. I am a Sarah J. Maas girly. But what I can tell you, if you've never read a Sarah book before, you don't have to read her other books to read this one. She is chunky though. She's about almost 800 pages, I think. But this is a fantasy romance. The next book I chose for a red cover is Good Girl, Bad Blood. Here's the issue with this one. You do have to read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder in order to read this one. I highly recommend that you do, and you know what's even better? I highly recommend that you listen to these on audio. These books on audio are amazing, amazing. What I can tell you about these books is they are podcast format, and it's basically like true crime vibes. Basically, you follow Pip, and in the first book, she is trying, like, for her whole senior, like, research paper or research thesis or whatever you want to call it, she is trying to solve a murder. And she believes the person who was said to have done the crime didn't do the crime, and so she wanted to go and figure out what really happened. And this book is a lot darker than the first book, but I highly recommend that you read these. They're so good. Next we have The Final Gambit. I know, this is crazy because this is the 3rd book in a series, but if you're looking for an excuse to finish the series, if you've been putting this off, you should absolutely read this book. This is, how would you even describe it? It's like YA mystery vibes. Basically, how do I describe this? There is a girl who becomes intertwined with this family, and there is a lot of secrets and games and twists and turns and puzzles along the way, if that makes sense. Next, we actually have the start of a series. We're switching it up. We have Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I have read this book. I did really enjoy it. It's a very interesting, like, dystopian type world. There's kind of a romance. It's kind of like a afterthought. It is a secondary plot, not very heavy in this book, in my opinion, but definitely an interesting book that makes you think. Then we have a romance book. We have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I love this book. I devoured this book. There is a trope used in this book that is not my favorite. I didn't like how it was done, but Jacob and Bree are amazing. Amazing. I love this book so much. So I highly recommend. Some other books that have red covers that I have read but I do not own are After Dark with Roxy Clark. This is such a fun book, especially for, like, spooky season time. I know Halloween's over. Like, it'll be over when the readathon starts, but this is such a fun book about this family who is cursed, and Roxy actually runs this whole museum, like this tour, and like she makes money from the curse of her family. It's very interesting. It's dark, it's gothic, but it's also like fun and lighthearted. I don't know how to describe it. It's an experience. I enjoyed it. Then I have The Secrets of Heartwood Hall. I have read this book as well. It is very gothic, mystery, spooky vibes. That's all I can say. The final book I have for a red book recommendation is Final Girls by Riley Sager. And honestly, this book is pretty self-explanatory. It's basically a thriller book. For the next prompt that I chose to pick books, I chose 3-word titles, and I have quite a few. What's exciting is I actually had quite a few on my shelves, so here we go. If you're looking for something spicier, something to mix things up, you could definitely pick up Eyes on Me and Give Me More by Sarah Kate. These can be read as standalones. The first book in the series is Praise, but then both of these, so this is the second book and this is the third book, so you could pick up one of these. Just make sure that you check out triggers for both of these books because there is content that is not for everyone. Next is a book that I highly recommend, especially because not only does it count as a bonus prompt, but guess what? It is also one of my host picks for my favorite book, and that's Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. I love this book so much. I've tried to convince everybody I can to read this. This is a contemporary romance. It's a second chance romance. Elliot is going to be your new book boyfriend. You're welcome. Then we have A Shadow Crown, and basically what I've heard is that this is a fantasy story and it follows assassins. She is the assassin. Do I know any more information? I don't, because that's all I needed to know that I was in. I bought this book and I bought the second book. Both of them are 3-word titles, so they both could work if you wanted to read the whole series. A series we talked about in the red covers also could count for a 3-word title, and that is the Inheritance Game series. They all have 3-word titles. They count. Another suggestion I have is also a book I really enjoyed, and that is These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. You've got love triangle, you've got kind of secret identity, you've got this whole magical world. There's a lot in this book, but it was a wild time. I really enjoyed it. And then I had to wait forever for the second book and I was so sad, but guess what? The second book is out. The second book is also a 3-word title. The next book I have is A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. This is a very popular book. I have not read this one. My husband actually bought this one for me. This one might be my pick actually for the bonus prompt. What I can tell you is fantasy romance. That's what this one is about. Next we have The Stardust Thief. This is written by Chelsea Abdullah. I think that's how you say it, Abdullah. And this is my Fairy Loot edition, but what I can tell you about this book is fantasy romance. For the last bonus prompt, I chose books with a woman on the cover. Let's get into it. First, we have Clap When You Land. This is a beautiful book. It is told in poems. I love it. Any of the original covers of Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass, they all have Selena on the cover. So these would all work. These are fantasy. These are fantasy books. There is romance elements, but they're mostly fantasy. We have 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This book is magic. It's wonderful. It is a reimagining of a folklore. It's wonderful. It is fantasy romance. Then we have Sorcery of Thorns, which I need to read this book. I own it, put it off forever. This book is YA fantasy. The Bride Test is one of my favorite romance books ever. I love it so much. You can read this series as a standalone. It is part of the Kiss Quotient series, but this book in the series is my absolute favorite. Then we have a book that needs no introduction, but here I am, and we have Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This follows a band and Daisy Jones. And I would just recommend that you check triggers, and if you can, pick it up on audio. It has a full cast. Then we have The Wedding Season, and this is by Katie Burchell, I think is how you say her name. I had an arc of this book a while back, and I really loved it. It is essentially about a woman who is left at the altar on the day of her wedding, and it's about finding herself after being in a relationship for so long. And there is romance, but it is so small. This is really more about her and her like finding herself. The romance is so secondary to that. That's what I love so much about this book is it really was more about her rediscovering herself. Amazing. Wonderful. The last book recommendation I have for you is Love in the Time of Serial Killers. And I know that this is about a woman who is writing a thesis, I believe, on different serial killers. That's about as much as I know about this one. From what I understand, I think it is a romance book. I believe she does end up getting into a situationship or a relationship with her neighbor or something like that. Well, friends, I hope that my suggestions were helpful. I hope that you decide to join our readathon and consider joining Team Scarlet. But either way, I just hope you have a wonderful month of November and you avoid a reading slump and we get lots of reading done together. I will see you in my next video.